"Why are you home?" questioned Angela, my wife of 28 years, as she walked in through the garage, finding me seated at our kitchen table. A tall, young man trailed behind her, partially hidden by her slender, 5 feet 9 inches frame. Angela, always radiant, wore a white blouse with an undone button, revealing a hint of cleavage. Her auburn hair cascaded over her shoulders, and a black linen skirt showcased her toned legs. I met Angela while she was an administrative assistant, and we fell in love. Now, she stood before me with a man who was not her husband. Angela's companion, now standing beside her, looked at me with concern. I asked her why she was home so early, an hour and a half before her usual time. We had been inseparable since our first date, and I dedicated my life to her and our family. I built a successful insurance brokerage firm, and Angela achieved a bachelor's degree, progressing from a support role to leading HR in her company's Hartford, Connecticut office. The man introduced himself as Michael Browner, a new attorney at Kellerman & Sons, and a colleague of Angela's for the past couple of months. I ignored his outstretched hand, maintaining eye contact with Angela. I noticed signs of concern in her eyes as she cringed when I mentioned, "on you." I reminded her of the consequences for anyone who called her by that name in our home. Angela, a meticulous planner, had likely planned this conversation with Michael, expecting me to be a compliant, betrayed man. I glanced at Michael, smiling, knowing that his situation was about to become more complicated than he anticipated. I took a few deep breaths, pushing aside my growing rage, and suggested making drinks and discussing the matter in the living room. As I headed to the family room's bar, I heard urgent whispering between Angela and Michael. I returned with Angie's favorite Merlot and a tulip glass of amber for Michael, while I poured myself a bourbon. Settling into an armchair, I raised my glass in a toast before taking a sip of the fiery liquid. Michael studied the color and carbonation of his beer, commenting on its complexity. I revealed that it was Pabst Blue Ribbon, which angered Michael, and confused Angela, who mentioned my previous disdain for the beer. I laughed, expressing my frustration at their attempt to have a calm conversation while being rude and condescending. I suggested that we needed to have a proper conversation, one that was polite, uplifting, and loving. Michael, who had initially addressed me as Mr. Harrington, presumptuously switched to calling me Chris. I insisted that he address me as Mr. Harrington or Sir, much to Angela's discontent. She expressed her fury at my behavior that afternoon, insisting that it needed to stop. I nodded, contemplating her request, and asked about the topic she wanted to discuss. Angela revealed that she had received an anonymous email 2 weeks ago, warning about my alleged affair. She mentioned having more friends at my office than I did and apologized for the way she found out. Angela clarified that her involvement with Michael was a short-term fling, and she was still in love with me. She pleaded with me to stop, expressing her disinterest in a divorce. After taking a small sip of my bourbon, I responded, pointing out that her promises held no meaning. I questioned why I should believe this was her first affair and suggested that it could be her 51st. I urged her to think about our family and the possibility of a wonderful retirement. I expressed my belief that in a few years, her fling with Michael would be long over and forgotten. I walked to the den and replenished my glass, aware that my lack of courtesy did not go unnoticed by Angela and Michael. Upon my return, I found them huddled together, engaged in a whispered conversation. Michael asked if he could speak, and I allowed him the floor with a disgusted reply. Michael conveyed that Angela was correct in characterizing their relationship as a short-term fling. He expressed regret for getting involved with a married woman, emphasizing that it was something he had never done before. He acknowledged the connection they shared and spoke about Angela's exceptional qualities. However, he cautioned against divorce in the long term, noting the decades we had invested together. I expressed my inability to understand Angela's choice of seeking legal advice from a corporate attorney who graduated in the bottom quarter of his class from Texas Southern University Law School. I questioned how she knew that Michael, or Swipe, as I called him, didn't finish explaining that knowing one's enemy was one of my mottos. Angela disclosed that she and Michael were spending the weekend together, detailing their itinerary. Despite being aware of their exact plans, the audacity of my wife's statement deeply saddened me. I expressed my disappointment, hoping she could perceive the profound sadness in my eyes. I pointed out the impact on our quarterly getaway weekend tradition to New York City, filled with memories of spectacular sights and heartwarming experiences. Angela sensed my devastation and responded accordingly, but I was too consumed by the voices in my head urging me to end it. Turning to Michael, I questioned him about his wife's reaction to his involvement with mine. Angela urged me to stop, explaining that Michael was a widower, and his wife had passed away several years ago. Even Michael displayed some decency, cringing at my wife's last statement. I smirked and addressed Angela, remarking on the contrast between Michael and her. I inquired about her being widowed, and Michael hesitantly confirmed it. I reached down and retrieved a manila folder from the backpack next to my chair, revealing details about Michael's late wife, Dr. Cynthia Browner. She was an emergency department surgeon who had relocated to the Hartford, Connecticut area to join her husband. Angela confronted me about the revelation, asking if I had lied to her. I couldn't contain my laughter, expressing amusement at the situation of a cheat and a liar accusing each other of dishonesty. Michael intervened, reaching out and cupping Angela's hand, making plans for their future together as if I didn't even exist. Finally, I gathered the strength to speak up, requesting their attention, asking for the chance to lay out my thoughts and feelings. Amidst their betrayal, they exchanged uncertain glances, unsure of how to respond to my request for fairness. I pushed the issue, emphasizing the importance of giving me just 30 minutes of their time. After some reluctance, they finally acquiesced and took their seats. With practiced ease, I set up several Zoom meetings, a skill I had honed during the COVID-19 pandemic. As the TV screen flickered to life, I addressed Peter and Lou, asking if they could hear me. Once the introductions were made, I stunned Angela and her companion by revealing the presence of Lou Beard, my new divorce attorney, and Michael Browner, a corporate attorney. Handing the floor over to the attorneys, Lou wasted no time in laying out the situation. He informed Angela, now addressed as Mrs. Harrington, that he was representing me in our impending divorce, and that papers had already been filed. He gave her a deadline to secure her own legal representation and arranged to be served, warning of the consequences of non-compliance. Lou disclosed that infidelity was cited as the cause for divorce, supported by detailed evidence collected by a private investigator documenting her affair with Mr. Browner. Their shock was palpable as the reality of the situation sank in. As Lou concluded his remarks, I placed a second manila folder onto the coffee table in front of Angie, causing both of them to react with surprise. I informed them that it contained a copy of our divorce petition, along with the private investigator's report. I emphasized our intention to insist on the full enforcement of the prenuptial agreement, which had been regularly reviewed every 2 years to align with state legal guidelines. Angela's signed and notarized signature was on every update for the past 28 years, ensuring its enforceability. Next, I conveyed the decision made by the board of directors of Harrington Brokerage the previous night, which relieved Angela of all corporate responsibilities and severed her association with my firm entirely. I outlined the timeline for returning her company car, canceling company credit cards and cell phone, and terminating memberships to various clubs. Additionally, I mentioned the cancellation of joint credit cards and the freezing of joint financial accounts, all in accordance with the prenuptial agreement. We then detailed our request for an 80-20 split of assets in my favor, including the retention of the house free and clear by myself. We also requested expedited eviction and a 30-day period for Angela to remove her personal belongings from the property. I mentioned the absence of alimony and child support and noted that there were additional claims which Angela's attorney could explain. Lou concluded by asking if there was anything he had missed, to which I responded that he had covered all the essential points, expressing appreciation for his thoroughness. As the TV screen went black, Angela immediately stood up and exclaimed that they should wait. She turned to me and requested to bring them back as she had questions. I responded by informing her that it doesn't work that way, and she would need to hire her own lawyer to get answers. Angela then expressed her frustration, threatening to destroy me. I turned to her companion and inquired about his legal opinion on the potential impact of this development in the divorce. His lack of response caused Angela to sink back into the couch, visibly distressed. I couldn't help but smile widely as I waved the TV remote at her before pointing it at the TV again, as the second Zoom meeting commenced. I addressed Jake and confirmed if he could hear me. He responded, stating that he had a conference call to attend and needed to keep it brief. He proceeded to inform Browner of his termination, stating that his personal items were being removed from his office and would be left in the lobby with a 24-hour window for retrieval before disposal. Jake mentioned that there would be no recommendation provided. Despite expressing disappointment in Angela's behavior as a senior member of his staff, Jake acknowledged her 29 years of exemplary service. However, he announced that her position in Hartford had been eliminated and offered her a similar role at their facility in Albany, New York. He gave her a week to decide on the transfer and 30 days to complete the relocation. The screen went blank again, leaving Angela in tears while her companion slouched back on the couch. I was purposely smirking at Michael when he saw me. His rage started to build. He was younger, bigger, and I'll guess stronger. Unfortunately for him, he was as stupid as a bag of rocks. As Michael was ready to explode, I once again waved the remote, pointed it toward the TV, and pressed a button. The screen lit up, and I asked Dr. Browner if she could hear me. Michael and Angela sat in stunned silence, their faces white as ghosts, and their mouths hanging open. The face of a beautiful blonde filled the screen. Cynthia addressed Michael, informing him that she had filed for divorce and that he should expect to be served in the coming days. She stated her intention to remain in Michigan with their children and mentioned that she had managed to retain her position at the hospital. Michael pleaded with Cynthia, asking her to reconsider and suggesting that they could work things out. He insisted that his affair was just a fling. The expression on Cynthia's face, as seen on the screen, indicated her disgust. Cynthia dropped a bombshell, revealing Michael's repeated job losses due to his infidelity. Her additional investigation following Chris's prompt painted a damning picture. She listed off the names of Angela's associates, detailing Michael's affairs with each of them. Angela remained silent as Cynthia laughed off any expectation of an answer, declaring Michael unwelcome in her home and requesting his address for his belongings. As the screen faded to black, Michael's threat sent a surge of adrenaline through me. Without hesitation, I retrieved my Colt .45, aiming it squarely at him. The sight of the weapon seemed to physically stagger Michael, but I didn't flinch. I laid down the law, giving him a choice: leave or stay quiet. His silence was the only acceptable response, and thankfully, he chose to comply. Turning back to the screen, I caught sight of Angela's tear-streaked face. Her anguish was evident, a gut-wrenching sight that stirred a mix of empathy and resolve within me. Angela disclosed that she had been seeing a counselor for the past 2 weeks, which prompted her to groan and cry. She expressed frustration, remarking on the irony that despite her actions, she was the one seeking mental health support. Later, I recounted to Angela an insightful question posed by Dr. Waters during our counseling session. She asked whether I understood the saying, "Love is blind," which struck a chord with me. I reflected on how my love for Angela had blinded me to her flaws, even to the point of ignoring her infidelity. Despite everything, I conveyed the depth of my love for her, expressing doubt that she would find anyone else who loved her as intensely as I did. Angela, still visibly upset, explained that she intended to continue seeing Dr. Waters. She emphasized the importance of having someone trustworthy to confide in, especially after such a traumatic experience. She expressed disbelief at the extent of the humiliation and disrespect she endured from someone she loved deeply. However, she remained optimistic, stating her determination to overcome the hurt and move on from the relationship. Angela mentioned discussing her plans for the day with Dr. Waters, who had reservations about seeking revenge but approved of the first 3 Zoom meetings as a form of payback. However, Dr. Waters advised against the next Zoom meeting, fearing it might set back Angela's personal recovery due to the emotional pain it could cause. I've considered it and will acknowledge that Dr. Waters is probably correct. The upcoming Zoom meeting is likely to do more damage than good, but I don't care. This meeting will hurt me, but it will hurt you more. As I held up the remote for the fourth time and waved it at her, Angela shrank back into the couch in a panic. I pointed it at the TV and pushed the button. All eyes were riveted to the screen, and when the face appeared, Angela expressed distress. Chris's daughter Kelly then expressed her love for her father, prompting him to reciprocate. Angela cried out, questioning how Chris could treat her so poorly. Kelly interjected, revealing that she had overheard Angela's conversation with her boyfriend and was aware of their actions and plans. She expressed her disappointment and disgust towards her mother, calling her actions grotesque and pitiful. Angela attempted to justify herself, but Kelly remained firm, asserting that Angela's behavior was selfish and self-absorbed. Angela expressed her deep loneliness to Kelly, explaining how much she missed her since she moved away. Kelly, appearing perplexed on the screen, questioned if Angela was blaming her for her own troubles. Angela denied this accusation, insisting it wasn't what she meant. Despite Angela's plea to come to Boston to talk, Kelly rejected the idea, citing Angela's plans to be with her new boyfriend and their private celebration nearer to Cape Cod. Kelly revealed her pregnancy and her intention to celebrate with those who bring love and happiness, not the negativity that has consumed Angela's life. Angela, asserting her maternal authority, demanded an invitation, but Kelly firmly refused, seeking a celebration devoid of the turmoil Angela represents. For the fourth time, the screen went blank while Angela sat visibly upset. I stood up and discreetly placed my pistol at the back of my pants. I announced that I was going out for dinner and would return in 2 hours. Addressing Angela, I requested her to pack her belongings and essentials, informing her that she wouldn't be allowed back until the court responded to my divorce petition, a process expected to take about a week. Turning to Michael, I reminded him of my capabilities and gave him 3 days to leave the state, warning of severe consequences if he remained by Monday. As I pulled open the front door, I glanced back at the defeated individuals and mentioned the supposed beauty of the upcoming weekend in New York. The second story unfolds, with my name being Jim Reynolds, now 56 years old, standing at 5 feet 8 inches and maintaining decent shape. I've been married to Kelly for 22 years, whom I believe to be my life and soul partner. Kelly, 45, with blonde hair, blue eyes, and standing at 5 feet 2 inches, is built for lovemaking. I cherished lovemaking moments with her whenever we were alone, although there were times she didn't reciprocate the favor. I spent 8 years in special forces right after high school, mastering explosives, followed by 6 years in engineering school. Subsequently, I established my own company, now a multi-million-dollar construction business. Not many know about my military service due to the demons I battled, leading to 4 years of counseling. My pilot's license predates my military service, but Kelly never trusted me enough to join me for rides. I fell in love with Kelly from the first moment, and we married 2 years later. Coming from old money with her maiden name as Moore, she descended from Richard Moore of the Mayflower. Kelly's family, however, viewed me as a mere servant. Despite this, I spared no expense on her, buying a large house in Cambridge, Massachusetts, complete with a 4-car garage and a BMW. We have 2 kids, or more accurately, she has 2 kids, John, 21, and the 19-year-old, both in college. I bought them each brand new BMWs, and I own a 10-year-old GMC 4-wheel drive pickup. About 6 years ago, they began mistreating me, later revealing they don't consider me family. They don't heed my words and do as they please, only listening to Kelly, their mother. I hired JN 8 years ago, thinking he was my best friend, but the kids seemed to adore him. Approximately a year ago, Kelly inadvertently left her email open, and my curiosity led me to read through them all. To my disbelief, she professed to have despised me since we met, a sentiment echoed by her entire family. Shockingly, I discovered that the kids aren't mine, they belong to my ex-best friend John, a truth they've known for about 6 years. Unbeknownst to me, John knew Kelly before I hired him, and the situation amuses them. Upon marrying Kelly, my father-in-law insisted on a prenup which I signed. It expires in 2.5 years after 25 years of marriage and includes an infidelity clause stipulating that cheaters leave with nothing. A friend from my military days, Kevin, connected me with Paul, an expert in surveillance. Paul set up a system where Kelly's emails are forwarded to a private account of mine, along with copies of my kids' emails. My entire house is wired to allow me to hear their phone calls, and I have video recordings. John and his friends mock me, well aware of the prenup and the affair, eagerly anticipating the arrival of Tom, my best friend, to take over. I possess a video of my father-in-law discussing a plan to create the illusion that I received funding for my company from him. Their scheme involves having John take control of my business, a plan they've been plotting for years. This explains their strategic move to have John apply for a position at my company and act as if he were my closest ally. The only individuals I genuinely trust are my old military buddies, and I'm grateful for maintaining contact with them. I've enlisted Paul as a computer consultant for my company, and he has secured its network, helping me identify allies and foes. This provided me with about 1.5 years to prepare for an impending divorce. During this time, I assumed a role that required me to endure a strained relationship, refraining from expressions of love and engaging in physical closeness only to maintain appearances. Reflecting on how she mistreated me, I intensified these encounters to inflict emotional distress. I made sure to do so only when I was certain she hadn't been involved with John, often sending him out of town for business without her catching on. Although I acknowledge past indiscretions, I pretended ignorance to keep up the appearance that John remained my closest friend. To humiliate her, I engaged in public encounters and discreetly conducted DNA tests that revealed our children weren't biologically mine but rather John's. Their elaborate plan involved John taking over the company after our divorce, aiming to exploit and embarrass me. Privately, I met with a competitor to sell my company at a reduced price, as I trusted his honesty despite our prior competition. I disclosed my reasons for the sale, ensuring confidentiality among a select few, including our lawyers. The law firm I hired shared my disdain for my father-in-law, a key factor in my decision to engage their services. They provided guidance on establishing a private bank account and phone account, additionally suggesting convincing Kelly and the kids to lease cars instead of buying new ones, a proposal well received by everyone involved, ensuring annual upgrades at a lower cost for me. Quietly, I began packing my belongings and placing them in a rented storage shed. People would often laugh either in front of me or behind my back. I suggested to Kelly that we start filing our taxes separately and transfer the house solely into her name for tax purposes. To achieve this, we needed a new mortgage solely in her name, a concept her entire family supported, making it simpler for her to claim the house in the divorce. My new law firm also recommended this to protect my credit. Despite her desire for home improvements, including an in-ground pool, I allowed her to have what she wanted, funded by a second mortgage in her name. Since the house was now solely in her name, the loans also had to be in her name. Half of the funds went towards the changes she wanted, while the other half discreetly found its way into my private account, unnoticed. I continued handling all the bills, altering my insurance beneficiaries to direct funds to charities in the event of my demise. I sold my company without attracting attention, ensuring the new owners retained all employees except for JN and his associates. Within a year, everything was prepared for my departure. I proposed treating the entire family, including in-laws and my now ex-best friend John, to a 2-week trip to Europe, a move they likely mocked behind my back, yet it served my purpose, especially since Kelly footed the bill. I purchased 150 acres of land in Alaska, discreetly accessible only by plane, utilizing my concealed pilot's license. Plans were made for an off-grid cabin on stilts in a plane shelter, with a hired company to build it, aiming for a move-in ready status. Recognizing the longer timeline for completion, I also bought a house with a large barn-like garage. My residence would be in Fairbanks, a simple house where I could keep a motor home and have a place to stay when I wanted to travel. A military friend who shared my dislike for my in-laws registered a new motor home in his name, despite his reluctance. I insisted on compensating him and my other friends for their assistance from Kelly's emails. They believed I was naive. I ceased payments on the house, their cars, insurances, and utilities, all in Kelly's name, thus her credit would suffer, not mine. Establishing a P.O. box in Kelly's name, I had all bills sent there, creating an illusion that I was managing their finances. When the divorce is finalized, her credit will be impacted, and with no alimony payments due to unemployment, they won't uncover the details of my company's sale. All the funds went to an offshore account, creating the appearance that I lost the company to the new owners. Moreover, my plan involves disappearing just before the trip. I informed them of a company emergency, stating that I would join them later. Their lack of concern and happiness about my absence didn't go unnoticed. On the night prior to their departure, I made sure Kelly would remember me vividly, engaging in intimate activities and pushing boundaries for the first and final time, leaving her initially pleased but ultimately sore and angry. Too bad for John, who had been intimately involved with her for years but had denied me the same experiences. Once they departed for Europe, I returned to the house, leaving it wide open. My friend Paul retrieved surveillance equipment, and I paid a moving van company in cash to transport my belongings to Alaska. I took essentials such as clothes, tools, fishing gear, and weapons from my military days, securely stored until my arrival. Leaving all furniture behind, I ensured they wouldn't discover my destination, leaving no paperwork mentioning Alaska. My son Mike, uninterested in hunting or fishing with me, remained unaware of my usual trip destinations. I retained my old phone account to keep Kelly oblivious to my plan, intending to close it out in about a month. Upon departure, I left my old phone with a colleague, instructing him not to answer calls from my wife but allowing him to make calls for a month. Subsequently, I visited my in-laws' house with my keys, turning on all lights, and utilizing Mike's laptop. I posted on a college website about a week-long college kegger party at their house, anticipating potential chaos. Recognizing their frugality and preference for John, I closed all bank accounts and canceled credit cards from both my wife's and my accounts, totaling $50,000. I sold my truck to a car dealer, and after 3 days, departed for Alaska without disclosing my destination. Monitoring events through my wife's emails, no one, including my wife, kids, in-laws, or ex-best friend, made any effort to inquire about my whereabouts. They enjoyed thinking everything was my responsibility, unaware that my wife Kelly was the one funding it all. I took my time, enjoying the sights while crossing the country, relying solely on cash for expenses. I drove to Bellingham, Washington, hopped on a ferry to Valdez, Alaska, and then continued to Fairbanks, all without needing a passport. By the time I reached Washington, Kelly and her family had returned from Europe, finding their homes and properties wrecked, completely unaware that I orchestrated it. Surprisingly, they hadn't noticed my absence, being more concerned about their houses than my departure. It was the police, not my so-called family, who started inquiring about me on that Sunday. Granting my attorney written power of attorney for my divorce, I informed them that I would check in 2 weeks later without revealing my whereabouts. On Monday morning, Kelly received her infidelity divorce papers. Although I wanted to sue John for alienation of affection, Massachusetts law prohibited it due to numerous lawsuits against state politicians. Nevertheless, John and his associates lost their jobs as per my agreement with the new company owners, with all his belongings gone. It was a shame that Kelly found herself owing more than she had in the bank, pursued by creditors, and her cars repossessed. Power and water were cut off, property taxes and both mortgages were overdue, forcing her and her spoiled kids to move into her parents' hotel since their home was completely trashed. Her parents had to rent cars for the entire family, feeling empathy for their difficulties. John also had to move in with them, pleading with Kelly's parents for a rental car. They transitioned from BMWs to less impressive vehicles. Kelly and her family hired private investigators to locate me while Kelly's attorneys attempted to stall the divorce, a futile move. The case gained public attention, with DNA test results and explicit videos circulating online. Audio recordings exposed the affair's duration, family involvement, and their plans to ruin and humiliate me publicly, seize my company, and their disdain for the middle class. Videos and audio of her family bribing politicians and public officials and mistreating honest individuals were disseminated on various websites. The divorce eventually included. The judge assigned to the case had to recuse himself as he was one of the exposed paid-off public officials. Though I reached out to the kids, they ignored me. 5 years later, during a visit to Boston to finalize some old business, I went to a restaurant frequented by her family. They walked past me without recognition, now sporting long gray hair, a beard, and in better shape. I asked my waiter to send their table a bottle of champagne. The entire family looked 20 years older. They stared at me, and after a few minutes, Kelly yelled, "Oh my God, you son of a gun." She recognized me and revealed my identity to them. John attempted to confront me, but with one punch, I knocked him out. When his son approached, I subdued him but not completely. Kelly ran up, berating me for ruining her family and hurling insults. The police arrived and arrested me. I had the waiter contact my lawyer since I doubted the police would allow me to. They reviewed the surveillance tapes, confirming my calm interaction, and subsequently released me. The footage depicted me sending champagne and calmly conversing with them, highlighting my self-defense stance. Without my lawyer's foresight in preparing for such incidents and securing copies of the surveillance tapes, I believe the police wouldn't have released me, given their connection to my father-in-law. Kelly phoned my hotel room, requesting a conversation. We met in the hotel lobby, ensuring our discussion was recorded. She questioned why I had taken such actions against her and her family. I looked at her in disbelief, calmly revealing that I discovered their plot against me and acted preemptively. I disclosed my awareness of her ongoing affair with John, questioning why she married me if she harbored hatred. I refrained from mentioning the Wired house or spying through her email. They lost their house and cars. Mike lost his house and truck, forced to live with her parents. Kelly dismissed it as nothing personal, initially escaping her family. She admitted finding pleasure in manipulating me and enjoying the situation involving John. I asked why she didn't divorce me when she met JN, and she claimed it was initially enjoyable, ensuring she'd gain everything. I left it at that, returning to my room without further comment. The next day, I departed, heading back to Alaska to relish a peaceful life. I left them to grapple with the ruins I caused in their lives: credit, finance, pride, and reputation, far preferable to resorting to violence. They will have to live with the constant reminder of me.